this is Al, and welcome to episode 3 of Ask Al. I recently requested for more questions from fans and received a fair amount of them. However, I could only fit about half of them into this video. The remaining questions will be answered in episode 4. Let's get started. James Moberly asks, what defines worth in a human being? That's an age-old question in philosophy. How are we to place value on a human's life? Is it through utility? That is a person as valuable as they are useful? This is referred to as utilitarianism in philosophy. Well, say that hypothetically, John is an important politician who has just the right insights in order to solve a certain social or economic issue. And for this example, we'll presume he can really do it. He is also a rapist and serial killer who's claimed dozens of innocent lives. Are we to place value on this man simply because of his usefulness? No, I think most people would agree that his value as a person is lessened because of his other actions. On one hand, he is extremely valuable to the people who his political decisions will affect. On the other hand, he is worse than scum, and most people would agree he is worthless. It's all relative to whom the value is for. Value as a concept is not universal or inherent. The bear killed by the hunter probably has little or no value as a living being to the hunter. However, to the bear cubs, she is of the highest value because she is their caretaker, their protector, the one who provides nutrition. In summary, value is relative to those who place the value. It is not an intrinsic quality of anything in the universe. Oscar Law asks, if you had the choice between doing the right thing but no one ever knows about it, or doing the wrong thing but people think you're doing right and know about it, which would you rather? Well, I can think of examples in which I would choose both or neither. However, to stay generalized, I would choose the former. I would rather do what's right and nobody know about. My actions are not based on what other people would think of me, but rather on the very principles which define me and my nature, my way of doing things. Zira Grace Binwag asks, is there a possibility that El didn't actually die and he'll come back in one of the cases Nier is supposed to solve, but he can't and so El knows about this and thus is going to confront Nier? No, I'm quite sure El did in fact die. However, if we were to assume he didn't, I believe he would have been working secretly with Nier and thus would have no reason to confront him later on. There are 2 fan questions here which are similar and I've decided to answer them both. M asks, do you think that Mello and Nier could have caught Kira if they worked together in the first place? And Destiny Perez asks, did El want Nier and Mello to work together in the first place? I think that Nier and Mello are 2 sides of the same coin. Nier, like El, prefers to sit back and wait on the sidelines, not to get too involved in a personal way, whereas Mello likes to take action and be involved in what's happening. As I mentioned in a previous episode, this is what got him killed. But I think if they had been willing to cooperate, Nier would have been making the decisions behind the scenes and Mello would have been acting on them, playing essentially as Nier's pawn, eyes, and ears. I do believe they would have caught him sooner, and if Mello could suck up his pride and just listen to Nier's orders, yes, I think they would have. As for the second question, I actually have a theory about this. See, the entire time before El died, he was of course aware of Nier and Mello's existence, whereas Light was not. He knew that if he died, and Light had taken his place as El, it would be clear enough to Nier when he found this out. If you recall from the anime, this is exactly what happened when Nier did find out. I have to think that El planned that, so yes, I do think he wanted them to work together. Ronel Elau asks, is it possible for El to win over Kira if Kira didn't have the Shinigami on his side? No, I think it would have gone the same way. If you think about the other events that were occurring at the time, or just before El's death, Misa had just regained her memories and made the deal for the Shinigami Eyes. Her next move would have almost certainly been to kill El and get Light's memories to return as well. The only thing that would have been different is that Wataru would not have died and could have assisted Nier and Mello. He could have shared all the information from El's Kira investigation with Nier and sped up the process significantly. It didn't take Nier long to discover that the new El and Kira were the same person, but it would have happened a lot faster with Wataru and his information still being around. Tejas Chitness asks, what do you think about free will? I'm inclined to believe in free will over determinism, in part because if I believe in determinism, I necessarily had no choice in doing so, but also because it genuinely feels as if we can make choices. There are obvious environmental factors that can affect our decisions, but we still seem capable of making choices. If we are governed by deterministic laws, there is no way for us to ever discover this. You ask questions about free will, the question of consciousness typically follows. I do not believe consciousness to be an ontological, ethereal thing as such. I think that with a lot of things, we don't know the reality of it, but rather we have a concept which, in some ways, parallels the reality. I'll go into further detail on this subject at the end of the video, but what I'm getting at is William James's idea of consciousness, which is that consciousness is a sort of stream, it is a process. A process that is the result of our brain, somehow. In philosophy, this is referred to as the mind-body problem. How does something physical result in this thing we call mind? That much is unclear. But I like to think of it in the way James describes it, though slightly different. I see it as our brain has a variety of regions with different functions, and our consciousness is simply the ability to choose which of these regions to send electrical signals into in order to meet different ends. To recall a memory, send electricity to the hippocampus, for example, and etc. In short, I do believe in free will, though it would be rather odd for the brain to be the one thing in the universe which defies deterministic law. Then again, we seem to be the only things that can speak too, so there's that. Eliza Kabila asks, why are you so sure that you're speaking like Elle would? I am not sure. I'm just a representative of what I take his positions to be. The only person who can know for sure what Elle would think is the writer who created him. Kylo Malefi asks, hey Elle, can intelligence be taught? Intelligence is an extremely general word. It's like science. You can't really fit it all into the same heading. There's biological science, physics, electrodynamics, environmental science, etc. Intelligence is sort of the same. There are people who are genius at music but terrible at art, or artistically intelligent but are hopeless while holding any kind of instrument. There's mathematical intelligence, linguistic intelligence, creative intelligence, deductive intelligence, visual intelligence, the list goes on and on. Yet none of these can really translate to the other. Just because you're the world's greatest mathematician doesn't mean you're any good at art or writing poetry. In fact, you may be terrible at both. So generalizing the question is tricky, but in specifying the variety of intelligences, I've already touched on the answer. Everybody has their own sorts of intelligence, activities, or interests which work well with their brains, with their unique skill sets and experiences. I do think anybody can learn just about anything, but as Einstein said, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it'll go through its whole life thinking it's stupid. He was referring to the public schooling system, but it makes my point. Humans are quite versatile. It's important to identify your own interests and skills and try to tune those. This is how you can improve yourself. Of course, you can still learn other types of skills, but you may not be as naturally adept at them. They will take more work. Diaz Arga asks, could humans avoid feelings? Well, technically yes. If you've ever heard of psychopaths or sociopaths, they both, to varying degrees, have no emotions at all. Emotions are all in the brain. Though they are usually attributed to the heart, this is incorrect. The heart simply pumps blood. Psychopaths or sociopaths do not by necessity fit into the common picture they are painted. They are not all cold-blooded killers or criminals. Some are businessmen, some are your colleagues. Some maintain otherwise normal lives. In fact, according to a recent statistic, 1 in 100 people are psychopaths. Though I gather that the actual question you asked was not the one you wanted me to answer. Of course, it's possible for people to not feel emotions, but I think the important question here is whether or not you can, or should. Emotions exist for a reason. They're not there to plague you or cause turmoil. Fear exists to protect oneself. In some ways, so does anger. Happiness exists to reinforce the activities which are beneficial to you. Disgust exists to prevent you from doing things or ingesting things which are harmful, etc. Should you avoid them? Well, no. You should simply identify why you're feeling it. If you know why, you can realize that either your reaction is unwarranted or excessive, or you realize that it's there for a good reason, and should be there. Viorel Ereccia asks, there are two beliefs people follow. Be patient, everything will come at its time, and if you want something, fight for it. Both are contradictory to each other. Which one would you go with, and why? And why do you think people follow the other? Indeed, these seem contradictory, but I advocate they're not. Let's take the word fight literally here. Say you're in a boxing match and you want to win. So if you want something, fight for it. Let's say you're fighting the world champion. Are you just going to go in wildly swinging your fists? No, he'll dodge and counter with a right hook, winning immediately. Let's say you're in a chess match against Garry Kasparov. Do you just blindly send out your strongest pieces and move as close to the king as possible, as fast as possible? No, he'll probably trap and kill each of them before checkmating you. The point is, even while fighting for something, you have to be willing to wait for the right time to strike. These two quotes are not contradictory, they go hand in hand. You do have to fight for what you want, but you can't just force your way through. Some things take time, but waiting doesn't have to be idle. If you're trying to earn your master's degree in biochemistry, even though it will take a long time and there are periods of inactivity, you can use this time to learn even more, to educate yourself further so that when you finally get your degree, you'll be further ahead. You must fight, but with patience and perseverance. Fleming Crusader asks, what is your opinion about true knowledge? Can we possibly achieve it? Is there something about our reality that we can get to know, or is everything relative and all we do is define concepts that we think will bring us closer to the truth, whether it exists or not? The problem with concepts is that generally they are defined linguistically, and words are only representative of their meanings. We tend to confuse the meaning of a word as a depiction of actual reality and don't realize that we may just be defining something arbitrary or a small portion of it based on what we can observe. For example, when we look at a rock, let's say a piece of obsidian, we see black and shiny and describe it as such. But in reality, these are just terms descriptive of what we can observe, not the entirety of the thing. Black and shiny are visual qualities, and since our visual perception is limited within certain wavelengths of light, we're really only discerning a small portion of its qualities in reality. The honeybee sees explicitly in the ultraviolet range of the spectrum. What do you think it sees when looking at the same piece of obsidian rock? Probably something very different. So clearly, we can't say that what we're seeing just is the reality, but rather a small fraction of it. Perception is limited, but not necessarily deceptive. I think we can trust our senses, but have to accept their limitations. So what else do we have? We have rationality and imagination. These are the primary basis on which we form concepts. You cannot perceive a chiligon, which is a thousand-sided figure, but you can conceive of one. So we can rationally know things that are true without being able to perceive them. This is the gift of rationality. But how then do we ever confirm the concept? I suppose you could take the time and count every side of the chiligon, allowing your perceptions to match up with your conception of the thing. But this isn't possible with everything, only with basic conceptions. It won't apply to universal laws of a complex nature. That is, you can't simply confirm the theory or concept by showing an example of it over and over and then say, great, it happened, it must be true. No. It would take an infinite number of confirmations in order to prove a universal. But it will only take one instance of disproving it in order to know that the law is untrue. Still, that leaves us with how to know something that is ultimately true. We can know for certain when something is not the case, but proving it for certain isn't so easy. Despite all this, we do seem to know things as true and are able to predict events based on our concepts of the laws at play by referring to a number of previous examples. When I let go of that piece of obsidian, I know for a certainty that it will fall towards the earth, and it will do so every time. So, can I say that I am in possession of an absolute and universal law, give or take nothing? Yes and no. I can know the result of things at play without understanding just why they're happening. Gravity is actually a perfect example of this. We know its effects extremely well, to a mathematical precision, but we still do not know why it happens. There are certain things, however, that we can know for an absolute fact. Take Pythagoras' theorem, for example. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. This is the definition of a right-angled triangle. It has been true since before any human existed and could conceive of it, and it will remain true after the universe succumbs to a state of pure entropy. Though no ontological triangle may exist at the time, the theorem remains true, at least in our universe. To summarize, I think we are equipped to know certain relational truths such as the Pythagorean theorem and maybe a few others, but we are not equipped, either by perception or rational prowess, to truly have universal knowledge about this or that. Perhaps a few simpler things we can know for certain, mathematical truths and the like, but when it comes to the more complicated things, the best we've got are concepts which are, to some extent, parallel. Thank you for listening and participating. If your question was not answered in this video, please stay tuned for the next episode of Ask Elle.